a full agenda today. This is our first meeting back in about 3 months. So looking forward to getting back into the groove of things. It looks like between now and September, we probably will just be having irregular meetings as need sort of comes up. But today we do have a full agenda. And maybe we could start with attendance. Nancy, would you like to start with that?
Yes. Sorry, I just had everybody's name here earlier. So I call your name. I just want to say that you're here. Councillor Howes.
Here.
Mayor Bailey. Okay. Amanda.
Good morning, I'm here, sorry.
Thank you. Amanda is absent and Dan Brown is absent. Lana Job is absent. Marianne Workman Rose.
I'm here.
Drew Stuse is absent. Joan Telfer Foe.
Here.
Member Michael Byrne.
I'm here, I think.
Bruce Leffler.
Here.
Steve Pinkett is absent.
Here.
Steve, you're here?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Steve. Steve Smith is absent. He sent his regrets. And then we have a number of staff members as well present.
And you're marking Dan Brown as sending his regrets, and I think somebody else had sent their regrets as well, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, so you've got that noted. Thank you very much. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda as printed? If there is no additions.
I'll move.
Okay, okay, moved by Mike and second by Steve House, Councillor House. All in favor, please raise your hands.
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay. And Ruth, I assume you
Yeah.
approve?
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Okay. Steve?
Yes, I'm in
House?
favor. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and Steve House? You're on mute, Steve. Steve House, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I just wanted to double check with some of the regrets and absences we have. Do we still have quorum for our committee?
Yes,
Nancy?
we do. Yes, we
Would you
do.
be able to answer that?
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so all in favor of approval of the agenda, please raise your hands.
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Pass. Okay. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Is there any? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to our first item is 12 Broadway demolition permit. And now, is Kevin Hyatt, are you the person speaking to this, or is Walter here with us today?
Walter, sorry, this is actually Peter from Wingbury Properties. Good morning, everybody. Walter is currently logging in. It might show up under my name, but we're hoping he joins in the next minute or two. And we have a relationship with Kevin. Kevin can jump in with his comments anytime there. That's no problem.
Okay, it looks like Walter is logging in. So
Yes.
we'll give him a second. Okay, so.
Oh, there he is.
So can you hear us, Walter, okay?
I can.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't have the login details.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you were able to make it today and join us. Before we sort of get started too much in detail, a lot of the membership of our group here probably isn't fully aware of all the work you've been doing in the downtown St. George, or in Paris, and in particular, the work you've done on the Wincy Mills. And that, so we're gonna have some people who'll probably listen in on this as well. And we just sort of appreciate the work that you've done in Paris over the last, several years. And maybe you'd like to just elaborate maybe on some of your experience there with the Wincy Mills and other places, if you don't mind.
No, by all means. Wincy was a bit of a passion project, if you will. We stumbled across that building by accident. I was driving through Paris one day. Went back with my brother later and looked at it and said, you know, that's really a building that something could be done with that. We ended up buying it sight unseen. I hadn't seen the inside. It was all boarded up. But what was kind of evident from the outside is that it was relatively unmolested. And that proved to be true once we tore out the stuff that Canadian Tire had layered in there over the years. Even the ground floor windows were in a restorable condition because they had been clad from the outside. The second and third floor, unfortunately, were not. They were rotted beyond salvation. But we ended up staying with a commercial development because that was really the only way to preserve the building as it was. A lot of people told us we should be changing it to residential, and it would have made awesome condos for sure. But by so doing, you'd lose all of the character. You'd lose the floors. You'd lose the ceilings, and everything would have to be drywalled. And it really would be a new building with an old brick exterior. And we didn't want to do that. So that was kind of what drove what Wincy is today. It's a pretty cool example of a building that really has not been modified extensively over its lifespan. I'm a believer in maintaining downtown cores. You know, I live in Burlington and I see what's happening in Brant Street here. And it's gut wrenching to see all of the history disappear. Unfortunately, like the house right next to Wincy at the time was one that, from an exterior point of view, looked kind of like, you know, this is an old home. It probably should stay in some way, shape, or form. When we looked at doing that, when we got in underneath it, it was shocking that it was still standing. It was actually frightening to walk through. The foundations had been undermined. People had dug basements in there where basements weren't meant to be. It was pretty scary, and it became evident that you just couldn't save it. The current property that we're talking about, the Spruce Goose or the whatever we want to refer to it as, there's not a lot of heritage there other than shape and window placement, perhaps. I don't know what we would do with it in its current form. So, you know, I sympathize with the notion that downtown history should be preserved as best as possible. By the same token, you know, we need to be a little bit practical and figure out how to do that then, or what to put there in its place. So appreciate the comments on the Wincy. We're certainly happy with the outcome, and I think by the sounds of it, Paris is as well.
Yeah, you've done an amazing job there. So how long have you owned the property there at 12 Broadway now?
Whew, you know, I'm over 50, so my memory is excellent but short.
It's, I think, around 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years sounds about right.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so you had it rented out for a while, did you? Or I'm
Yes,
just wondering, sort of your experience with. Yeah.
It was originally rented to, what was it called? The Cedar House, sorry. The folks that ran the Cedar House ran it for a while as Cedar House. When they vacated, we had another tenant move in for a period of time. When COVID hit, she couldn't see maintaining 2 restaurants in town and abandoned it and pulled out a bunch of her equipment along the way, which is fine. But when we got in there to have a look at what's really there, like to turn that into a proper functioning restaurant again would require an enormous investment, and I don't think it's not economically viable.
Yeah, like the kitchen's on the second floor. There's no handicap access. It's all stair levels up and down, right? No handicap washrooms. It's not really set up for a modern day restaurant at all.
It's not in today's world. It really doesn't work.
Yeah.
If I could jump in for a second.
So have you looked at other options for the property, or?
Not yet. You know, it really depends on what's going to happen along Broadway Street. we're hopeful and fingers crossed and encouraging and, whatever limited things we could do to encourage the town to move ahead with its plan for Broadway and Mechanic Street for that matter. I think the redevelopment of those two streets is going to fundamentally change how those streets get used and what their highest and best use will become. But I don't know exactly when that is in the timeline. There's a bunch of other. Sorry, go ahead.
What I wouldn't mind seeing, I know the building is in rough repair and so on, but it was the people who were there first that had, a lot of history. And I'm wondering if whatever you do, there might be a plaque or something recognizing who lived in that particular area.
I think that's a great, for sure. I think paying some homage to what it was as we move. Great plan. Sorry, someone's got their hand up and I'm not meeting.
Yeah. Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to our guests. I've been watching the dialogue about different people's passionate interest in the building, the property, the land, the history, and I'm respectful of all of that. My personal view is that, and this was kind of discussed amongst some of us informally, there's not much left of the original building that stood there 150 years ago or whatever. So I'm very conscious of that. And so I'm thinking ahead to your future plans for that site, assuming that that building is demolished. And I'm just wondering, have you been made aware of the raceway that existed along there that powered some of the industry in downtown Paris? And I'm just wondering, with your obvious interest in heritage and what you've done with the Wincy Mills, I'm just wondering, when you create whatever you end up building on that space, I'm wondering if there's a way to acknowledge not just the kind of the original owners and the original history of that spot, as Lana suggested, but some kind of architectural acknowledgement to the raceway that ran right along the side of that land. I'm just wondering if that's a possible solution to combining the past and the future in your spot.
I've seen the drawings, the old drawings of where the raceways ran. I'm not exactly sure in my head where that runs relative to 12 Broadway. But you raise an interesting point. Like, you wonder when Broadway and Mechanic Streets get restored or reworked completely, whether there's a literal physical acknowledgement of where those things go, right in the asphalt or the pavers or whatever they're doing, by changing color and literally physically overlaying the old map on the new new space as we go.
Yeah, and I've seen some conceptual illustrations along that line within our downtown master plan, which I'm sure Allison is going to speak to in a second, I'm anticipating. But I'm just wondering, within your plans for your property, if there might be some way to continue on some, and nobody's holding you to anything. This is all just early conversations, but I'm just wondering if you're open to some of that kind of discussion.
Certainly open to the discussion, without, like I said, I can't picture in my head exactly where they ran relative to the property we own. But I'm always interested in acknowledging what happened in the past.
Sure. Thank you.
Allison, would you like to comment a little bit on that, or?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I can comment a little bit on that. The mill race route was actually contemplated as a key aspect of the public design in the downtown master plan, and tracing that route with a walkway. it actually follows the existing walkway. If you picture adjacent to council chambers, goes out to Broadway, along Broadway, and then to the river in front of Wincy Mills. So we did envision using, whether it's pavers or having some public art along that route, to acknowledge that, and it would go directly in front of this site. So as I said, that is incorporated into the downtown master plan on a conceptual basis. So we would certainly work with both Wingbury and any other property owners along that to make that route a reality. And there's, like I said, various options that we could incorporate, whether that's historical plaques, the paving, or some historical features and public art along the way as well.
Does anybody else, Mike, did you have any comments or anything?
No, I appreciate the comments from the developer and from Allison. It sounds like a great plan.
Yeah. The challenge always with these older buildings is that it's you're trying to find that balance between your head and your heart, right? So what will work to make it, feasible in the long run, right? And that's the challenge, we face with this. And I'm not sure if Brandon's going to elaborate on this a little bit more, but we did sit down as a heritage subcommittee to go over, and I think there was 7 of us that night, sort of the an evaluation of the building as it sits, right? And the history of the property going back to 1839 is probably the oldest building in the village there in Paris. And then it was renovated 1870. And so that's what you sort of alluded to there before, is the challenges that the inside of the building's been totally gutted. And some of this comments is for people listening, and the committee has heard this before. The shell of the building is basically intact, the placement of windows and doors and things like that. Have you given consideration? I'm not aware of how good, say, the foundation is or anything like that, but as it sits, would you be able to say, and the challenge too, of course, is the Grand River Conservation Authority puts a lot of limitations on what you can do on that building. Is there any chance that additions could be put on the back that would make this feasible in the future, or do you feel it's just beyond that point? I'm just directing this to Walter.
I feel it's beyond that point. It's sort of sited right in the middle of that plot of land. I don't know how, it's not like you can incorporate the facade and build something. I can't picture in my head how that would work.
Right. Have you sort of given a thought to the style of the building that you're thinking of putting on that property at this point, or you're pretty open to it, or?
That's a really interesting question. So
Yeah.
I live in a construction world in the structural steel business. Maybe some of you do or do not know that. We've been involved in some of the most iconic projects in this country, like Royal Ontario Museum, Ontario College of Art and Design, the War Museum in Ottawa, Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg. So that there's a school of thought that says, every town or village should have some, or city should have some, call it cool architecture, for lack of a better word, something very modern, unique, and out there. I think in small towns, the sentiment tends to run more towards trying to build it in an older character. I'm not committed to any of those ideas per se. Like I think you have to build sympathetic to the area that you're in, while not trying to create an old building that's built in 2022, because that really doesn't either. It comes across unauthentic. So that's personal opinion, and it's in the end, if we ask 20 people what the building should look like, we're going to get 20 strong opinions. It's very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where do you sit on it?
Well, I'm of two minds. I enjoy watching the show Grand Designs, and they've done some pretty amazing jobs. and just doing exactly what you're kind of talking about, where they've took old buildings and renovated them to a more modern standard, and then added the addition is in contrast to it in a much more modern styling. And they, just for what you're saying, it's virtually impossible to get that character replicated today to what was originally. So yeah, there's lots of room, but I'm sure that whatever you do is going to be quality. So
I mean, I'm not an architect, but I'd like to think that I have some sympathy towards architecture because of the work life I've had for the last 40 years. You know, when I look at the worst example of what happened in downtown Paris, in my opinion, is the Carnegie Pipeline. So we took a historic building and completely ruined it from its original character, and then pasted an addition on the back. There was no reason to touch that original character at all. It should have, the entrance should have remained. The vaulted ceilings inside should have been there. That to me seems a bit criminal.
yeah.
Whatever, I don't know when that was built, but that was back in an era when people weren't that cognizant of history, I suppose.
Well, I think there's been definite change in the county council, whereas I think now there's a lot more people sympathetic to that. And I think there's much more awareness too out there, especially new people that are moving in, all appreciate the history that's here, would like to see it retained, as well as the older residents as well. So it's, yeah, again, it's that balance between your head and your heart, right? So do we have some more comments or questions for Walter? Mayor Bailey.
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me here today, and welcome, Walter. I believe, as the winner of the Ontario Heritage Preservation Award for Ontario for 2001, I'm very aware of what can be done and what can't be done. And I'm very impressed by what other people have done. Having gone to school in Holland, I've seen the infill of very colorful, very unexpected presentations amongst 800-year-old residences and streetscapes. And they are inviting, and they are surprising, and they are enjoyable. And you go to Cambridge and you see the new library in Galt, and you see, go to Hespeler and you see they built a glass box around their library because it was disintegrating and it wasn't worth fixing up. So they just enclosed it in glass. And that's an amazing thing to fall upon when you're going on the side streets of Hespeler. So somebody who's traveled a lot, in fact, just before the lockdown, I was in Copenhagen and looking at the opera halls and the art museums and things like that in Copenhagen, and then went up to Sweden. And again, the same thing, the infill was fabulous. It was interesting and unexpected, but as soon as you see it, you appreciate it. You wonder why they did it, and then you wonder why they wouldn't have done it. And everybody's happy as they keep walking down the street. Also in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, they have a walking tour of Charlottetown. And again, places that aren't there anymore have maps and charts and plaques saying that this was the home of this, and this was this, and this is where this happened and that happened and someone lived. And it's, when you look at it, it's something else, but you can imagine what it was like before because they describe it. Because the purpose of doing that plaquing is to bring your mind back to a different place. And then when you look at the buildings around it, they're still there. So you can put yourself into the flavor of the moment of the time. And it's not hard to take your mind back to something like that. In this case, I believe Walter has proven, I'm glad we're not just dealing with some yo-yo off the street that we don't know anything about. I think you've certainly proven, Walter, that you know what you're doing. And if we're ever going to reproduce another building, it would be the wonderful rumor that I heard that it might be a mirrored vision or version of the Wincy next to the Wincy, which would be wonderful. But I feel this building on Broadway is sort of a dwarf piece of property. And because John's property on the corner is so wonderful, and those things that have been done to the Carnegie building, Walter, we can fix all of that someday. We just have to protect the main structure. And you're right, a Carnegie building should never have been treated that way, but that's long before my time. So not that I'm throwing blame, but I'm just saying I was probably not around. But what I do see, Walter, is if we took your piece of property and we did, issue the demolition permit, it then then it becomes a huge corner of a very important corner of a very important place. And I think when we do tear down the OPP station and your place is gone, that's a huge corner that's going to anchor. And whether it's a library in a box or whether it's some sort of a screen, I'm not worried about what you're going to do there if you do something bigger than your piece of property. You know, because right now at council, we're talking about different ways of finishing the downtown, whether we do it on our own, whether we take on a partner, whether we take on a couple of partners. And I know that your name has come up once or twice. Not that we've committed to anything, but I do know that you're interested in Paris, and I do thank you for everything you've done so far. But this was not to be a conversational meeting, so I probably talked too much and said too much. But I just wanted to let you know that I think that your property is much bigger than your property. And when we get the owners of the property here saying there's no reason to keep it, that's what does it for me. 2 owners have spoken to me within the last month saying that, and they're the ones that should be joined by their heartstrings, and they're not. So I'm suggesting that this committee is going to do what this committee is going to do. But at the end of the day, Walter, I believe you pay the taxes and you maintain the property, and I believe that the decision will be yours. But I don't think whatever decision you make is going to be a bad one, because you do see a bigger picture on a bigger scale. So thank you for your interest in the county, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those kind words, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing about this committee, is that we're very informal. So it allows for these discussions that we wouldn't never normally be able to do at a council meeting. So I don't know if anybody else has any questions for Walter before we move on. Okay. Would you have any last comments, Walter, before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, just to speak to Mayor Bailey's sort of words there. I mean, in my mind, the town core needs a continuum of development, and there's far too many open spaces today. Even the Windsea parking lot should be in behind something. Probably needs to be between it and the Royal. You know, unfortunately, the LCBO was built way at the back, which is whatever it is, what it is. But I think people want to see a continuum of interesting development in order to draw them around the block, so to speak. Like if I was walking in downtown Paris today, I would not walk down Mechanic. I might to go see Windsea, and that's where it would end, because after that it's a concrete or asphalt jungle. And I think that's really where we need to focus, figure out how to turn that entire block into a pedestrian, person-friendly space that people want to go to, you know, with mixed-use developments, and potentially a library, and probably some more restaurants out of retail, commercial, mixed in with some residential. I mean, there's just huge potential in that block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that when we look at the police station location, I think that's going to be key to sort of fill that extra street up, because with the further development there of the Royal, there's going to be some more commercial there. So that I think will also help draw, and then we'll complement the Windsea Mills, and then going forth. Of course, the challenge is, and when we do this development, of course, it's because it was a floodplain, it does limit us to what we are able to do there. So it's always going to be a challenge in the location. So yeah, so it looks forward to continue that conversation with you. Any other comments?
No.
Okay. Well then, thanks. Oh, Mike?
No, I'm happy with what has been discussed.
Okay. Well, thanks, Walter, for joining us. And then we'll move on to 4.2, site visit overview of significant heritage features, Brandon Courtliff.
Very much. Good morning, everyone. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of our visit that we were able to do last week. First off, I just want to thank Wingbury for allowing us to wander through the site and get some photos and some more information. And so thank you very much for that. So as a number of the members have mentioned, the building has seen a number of changes, and that was very evident with our site visit, both exterior and interior. But again, much of the structure maintained or was intact, at least it seemed. Member Pinkett was there as well on behalf of the committee, and as I understand, you guys were able to chat as a committee and submit some comments as well. So thank you for those. Just as kind of a summary to those comments that have been received, and for kind of the benefit of those who may be watching, it seemed that most of the significance, at least heritage-wise, related to the structure, or related to the site, I should say, was more of the function of downtown, the relationship to its surroundings, the history of the site, the early development of Paris, dating back to 1840, 1839, I think it was mentioned, and the placement of the current building kind of on the site, and how it interacts with the street front. Aside from that, we didn't see any kind of significant heritage attributes or specific features of the building that would have been worth noting at this point. I think that was mentioned as well in some of the summarizing comments. So like I say, it's more based on kind of the intent of the downtown has been mentioned, maintaining that kind of historical relation to the property, and summarizing, like we've said, maybe with a signage or some sort of notification of maybe a bit of the history of the property, that kind of thing. So maybe just with that short and sweet kind of summary, I can open it up to any of the committee members who have comments or questions that they'd like to add, and staff are happy to help out from that regard.
Yeah. Is there any comments from the committee? Not sure. Would you have any comments, Ruth, further? We can't
No.
see you, so it's hard to tell
No,
sometimes.
it all sounds really, really good, and I'm really pleased with the direction in which it is going, and respecting certain parts of it and carrying on. Okay.
Okay. So, yeah, we've had quite a bit of time discussing this over the last week or so, so that sort of makes this go a lot faster. So if you're wondering, Walter, why there's little comments, that's why. So, so then next steps, I guess we'll move it on to Pam.
Thank you, Chair McAlpine. Hello to the Heritage Committee. My name is Pam Dusling, and I'm the General Manager of Development Services. So I just do want to remind everyone that I think the process is working quite well. We did have the demolition permit that was applied for in mid-April. And through the zoning bylaw, we did take a pause and provide information as needed to the Heritage Committee about the demolition permit. And the conversation has been great. And now is per next steps, we're taking back a report. Brandon and I and Allison will kind of co-author a report back to council on May 18th. And with some of the good discussion today, if it's appropriate, what we'll be doing is outlining to council that there are opportunities to work in the future with the developer on things like a plaque to recognize the historic buildings or property, an opportunity to develop within the historic mill race route as per the downtown Paris master plan, including the historic plaques and or historic art. And then the developer would be open to historical style of building and or being cognizant of the surrounding character of this historic neighborhood. So those are things that we will be reporting back to council and suggesting that it's appropriate to move forward with the demolition permit at this time.
Do we have any questions for Pam at this point? Okay. Well, thanks very much, Pam, for your report. It's much appreciated. Oh, Steve, House?
Thank you. Process question, Pam. Do you need something from the Heritage Committee to indicate that we understand and support what you've just outlined in your recommendation to council. I just wanted to see how this process is can best be managed.
Thank you, Councillor House. Yes, I would suggest that would be the appropriate resolution, if you will, from the Heritage Committee. And if you note that in your minutes, then we'll take that forward. Thank you.
Councillor House.
In that case, then I would move that our committee expresses that our understanding and support of the direction that Pam's going to be taking this in. And if there's a seconder, we can talk about it a little bit further. But I think it's important that we send a message one way or the other to council, because that's part of our purpose.
Mayor Bailey.
I'm seconding it.
Okay.
I'm seconding it so we can discuss it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll put that on the floor. Okay. And then we can start discussion, I guess, on that. Okay. So Steve, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Just to kick off the discussion. Some of us again met informally last week to have some discussion about this, and we went through a table or an evaluation process guided by our planning department, which was helpful. And I think through that dialogue, we came to an understanding that there is heritage significance to that property, to that address, to the stories behind it, but not necessarily attached to the four walls and roof as they stand there today. I came away from our discussion, and I'm happy to see Steve Pinkett nodding a little bit. I came away from our discussion that as I mentioned before, there's very little left of that building's original form. There's been so many modifications over the years. So while I am a huge fan of heritage and protecting heritage buildings, this particular building is not one that I'm trying to stand behind keeping. So I'm prepared to support the approval of the demolition permit based on the information and the discussions that we've had, including the openness of the owner to future acknowledgement to the historical value of the location as opposed to the building. But I'm very interested in anyone else's thoughts.
I agree completely with you, Steve. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about friendly amendment in a sense, because I think our motion needs some wordsmithing possibly on this. And it's just alluding to what you said, that in our motion, we should give, after careful, let's say something along the line of, after careful consideration by the Heritage Committee and the process of evaluation of the property, we are in agreement that I'm looking for some help here, but agreement that we can go forward with the demolition, or I don't want to say we're in favor of it necessarily, but that
I think it's important to have.
Do you have any ideas, Pam? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I just think it's important to reference. I agree that my original motion needed some wordsmithing, and I don't think we're there yet. But I think it's important to acknowledge the staff report that's going to go to council, and our support of that.
Maybe that's the best way of approaching that. because we did spend quite a significant time on this. Steve?
Yeah, just
Pinkett.
just a reminder. I mean, been on the Heritage Board now for a lot of years, even back in the early 80s when we first started and I was off it. And we didn't create, we were given, or we adapted or adopted a building and site evaluation system from Ontario Heritage. And we had used that same process of evaluation over the many years on a lot of the homes we had designated. And we did the same process here. I know there was only 6 of us, but quite often when we do the evaluation, we don't get the entire committee because the intent was to put people on a subcommittee for those things that have something to bring to the table for expertise as to what we're looking at. There's the history, there's the structure, all kinds of stuff. So when we did this there last week, and there were 6 of us that participated, it's an evaluation, but it's clearly states in the Heritage, Ontario Heritage Act that we're not supposed to, we're supposed to deal with the facts that were given us, the questions that were asked, you know, I mean, and we did that. And when we evaluated this and we got the total point score, it fell quite short of a building that, you know, to be designation. And I mean, it just barely squeaked through as a recognition. But so that alone is a start. And now my personal opinion is the site has more value than the structure. I've always said that. And to lose a building like that downtown, to me, it was more of a downtown atmosphere. I like the quaint restaurant part of it. I like, you know, and the history that surrounded it. But I do realize that we got to move on with some of these buildings. And so I think my comments that Steve Howes had asked me to, well, we decided at the last meeting we had, we put some words together and I written in, and we believe that the site itself has more significance than the building. And anything that's actually goes into replaces that, if we can recognize the site's history. And I think, Walter, I have no doubts that's what will take place. And I know we get criticized because being on the Heritage, you know, you got to save everything. Well, we can't save everything, but this is what the guidelines are for. So at the end of the day, I personally, like with Steve Howes, I mean, I have no problem at this point of saying yes to the demolition, but I would seriously like to think that we put some effort into recognizing the site history of the mill race. I'm not gonna call it the raceway, call it the mill race. And because it's only part, by the way, Walter, of the downtown. Several years back, I did an overlay of the downtown with Google Earth, and I put in all the raceways that were put in as early as 1834, including the tail races, which people have forgotten. They existed, and they went underground. Actually, one goes underneath the Bill Kennedy's New Royal, one of the tail races. And there's others. I had done all that, and it was very vast in the form of what it took place downtown, with the foundries and everything else. So whatever goes in there, I would love to be able to, like with our committee and the Heritage Research teams, to put some of that history towards you, Walter, and say, look, this is what we got. Can you help? Can you work something in with that to kind of celebrate the history? Because if the county is going to proceed with development in the old police station, I mean, that was actually one of the oldest lots in that area, and the race in 38. Mill race ran right parallel to that. And so I think the whole thing requires an overview as to whatever we put down there in regards to any of the buildings. And I think the raceways is something very important to consider. And so anyway, just saying, we did evaluation and it fell short. And And it is what it is, and that's what we do the evaluation for. So anyway, that was my comments there. I mean,
Okay, I'm going to bring Nancy in on this. Are you able to wordsmith something with this motion? And then we can vote on it, I believe.
Certainly. So I believe your motion you would like to make is that sorry, I don't have this written down, but that the Heritage Committee would support staff recommendation to allow the demolition permit, and you would also like the opportunities to work with the developer, recognizing the history of the area.
Okay. Councillor House?
Thanks. Yeah, very much along those lines. I actually wrote something down. Try this. The Heritage Committee has evaluated the property and support the staff recommendation as outlined in the meeting of May 12th and look forward to working with the developer on future ways to acknowledge the heritage of the property.
Okay, and I was going to ask Pam if she had her hand up there, if that's what you're thinking as well.
Yes, Councillor McAlpine. I was just going to suggest some wording very, very similar to Councillor House. So thank you.
Okay. So do you have that now, Nancy?
I didn't catch it all, but I will.
Get it together.
Heather?
Yes.
Do you have some comments how we could do that better?
No, I think probably just want the elements of whereas an evaluation was completed and a designation is not going forward at this time, that the committee supports the staff report on the building, and that staff be directed to work with the property owner to find some recognition for the site and the area.
Okay. So I think that's, in general, the idea of the motion. So we have a mover and we have a seconder. If that's agreeable to mover and the seconder. Yep. Dave? Okay. Yep. So then all in favor, raise your hand.
Yep.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. So this will go forward with our recommendations to council at the end of the month. And appreciate, again, Walter, you joining us. And I don't know if you have any last comments going forward or.
Well, thanks for having me. It's it's an interesting process. I'm not real familiar with it, so I'm learning as I go. Look forward to seeing a totally developed downtown in the next few years.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to work. And again, really appreciate you coming forward and being willing to work with us. So thanks. And our next item, update on the Arlington CIP. So that will be Russell Press. Oh,
I will sign off.
You have a last comment? Yeah.
Nope.
Okay. Thanks. Bye for now.
I'm out too. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee. Just a quick update on the Arlington CIP. Be clear, we've not received a CIP application as yet from the Arlington. Back in March, staff were contacted by the general manager of the Arlington, and there was discussion and some explanation on their part to us on some renovations and looking for some insight on phases and accessible, the ability to access CIP and the various programs within the CIP and that sort of thing. And discussion took place then. And I believe the general manager of the Arlington reached back to us in April last month and indicated that there were some new quotes and some adjustments, and that an application would be forthcoming. So that's the current status on the Arlington at this point.
Do we have any questions for Russell at this point?
Who is doing the work on the Arlington? What company?
Again, we've not received an application at this point, so
You don't know. Okay. It's interesting that at each end of that block, we're going under some restoration with the church at one end and the hotel at the other.
Yeah.
So, Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say, at the very least, I think we should send just a message of support or appreciation or something to the Arlington Hotel. I know that we've done some recognition to them heritage-wise, and we love to see these kinds of bits of information where somebody is investing in preserving one of our great old buildings. And you know, we absolutely want to encourage that and support it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to accompany what Councillor Howes had mentioned as well in my previous statement, I should also mention that those details will be forthcoming to the committee once they are received from the Arlington through the application process. So the committee will be provided the information being asked for.
So if, I don't know if there's any further questions from anybody else. Do you have any questions, Ruth?
No. I'm looking forward to the application, and I'm glad of their interest in keeping the building up to date and restoration.
Yeah. No, it's great when somebody's willing to take that extra time to preserve these buildings. So they're always a challenge and an interesting process. So we can move on then, if that's okay. And you have any more comments, Russ, before we move on, or?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. So you don't need a motion or anything because you're just updating us. So
just an update. Really, the process will get going once the application is received.
Yeah. Okay. So then we'll have the official plan review and update. Is Jennifer Boyer here?
Through you, Chair McAlpine, I'm actually going to step in for Jennifer. She sends her regrets this morning, but
okay.
I'm happy to give an update if that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so through you, Chair McAlpine, as a number of you probably know, we are working on our new official plan for the County of Brant. It's been an ongoing project for a little while now, and we are aiming for, there's a provincial conformity date of July 2022. So next year, and that means essentially for us that we have to have our official plan done, written, and approved by our council to send off to the province by the end of this year to give the province time for their review. So that being said, there's a number of phases that we've gone through with the project already. Some very kind of information collecting sort of phases. So we've done some public engagement. We're in the process of meeting with a number of specific stakeholders or interest groups, as well as doing kind of an evaluation of the current policy regime in Ontario to make sure that all of those kind of compartmentalized or compartments come together to create the new official plan. And one of those steps obviously is going to be considering policies for heritage and heritage conservation. So we do have actually a decent amount of policy in our official plan right now. I believe it's section 1.11.2, anyways, cultural and heritage resources. And I'm happy to share that with the committee as well. But what we'll be looking for specifically from the committee, probably in the next month or two, are some comments on either that existing policy or any other kind of policy tools or structures that you've seen in other municipalities that you think might be of interest here in the county. A number of you have already sent us some information on that, and we're doing some research in the background as well. So thank you as well for sending that information. But what essentially we'll need is we're looking to modernize some of the policies, make sure we have a good set of tools in our toolbox for our committee, and looking to create some kind of tangible goals and objectives for us moving forward, so that as we work towards or with this new policy set, we'll be able to kind of work together with the Heritage Committee to make sure that the goals and objectives of the committee are being reached with our new policies. So that's kind of the long story short of the official plan process right now. For those who are watching or haven't, maybe don't know too much about the process, there is a project page now available on Engage Brant. So if you go to engagebrant.ca, there's kind of an opening for general comments, and there will be a period where we're moving into what we call our policy direction. That's kind of our next step. What that means is we've got kind of all of our ingredients together, and we're going to kind of create short phrases that'll go before council to let some discussion happen about what our direction for the policy will be. So if we want to see, for example, heritage conservation districts in certain areas, that might be one that we consider putting in as a direction point, and then having council discuss that, and maybe some comments submitted from our Heritage Committee. But we will be approaching the committee, I think more formally in June is when we'll be looking for those comments. So just keep that kind of in the back of your minds. And if you do have any questions about that right now or the current policies, we're happy to assist with that. But I'll leave that there, and I'll pass it back over to Chair McAlpine in case anyone has any questions.
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Brandon. Brandon, I know that having watched the evolution of the interest and the passions with regard to the Broadway Street property, heritage conservation is a hot topic for members of this committee and for residents of our county. And I know that there's pros and cons to considering heritage conservation districts. And I'm just wondering, will there, you've been discussing, but not getting into the details too much. You said that's going to be coming a little bit further, but will there be a specific presentation to this committee on pros and cons of heritage conservation districts and what the procedure is if this committee wants to encourage council to move in that direction for Paris or St. George or Burford or anywhere else? And I'm kind of interested in a little more detail on how that fits under the umbrella of the official plan, and specifically, would there be an opportunity within the official plan engagement with our residents to get their feelings on?
That's a great question through the chair to Councillor House. I'll just touch kind of briefly on some of those points. So under our current kind of toolbox right now in the official plan, we do have the ability to look into heritage conservation districts in the county as it is. As we know, like you say, they come with some pros and cons, and we're happy to provide some education from that perspective. There are tools that fall just solely under the Ontario Heritage Act and that kind of policy structure, but then there's other tools that are given to us, like our zoning bylaw, for example. We have that in place to trigger some of the review that we've seen with the 12 Broadway site, for example. So that's one that we can use as an alternative. But like I say, there will be some good opportunity to present a variety of the tools to the committee, and then even to the public to provide that information. And then that way we can kind of see what the temperature of the room is and what people are feeling about each tool, and we can make those recommendations to the council and then to committee following. But yeah, the new official plan will definitely take into account one of our buckets, at least, is protecting what we value. And that bucket itself is definitely going to be looking at cultural heritage. And we're working with the folks in economic development. They have the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Master Plan coming. So there's a lot of kind of master planning that's coming down the chute as well. So this official plan, the policies in that will set that base for kind of giving us those tools. As long as it kind of mentions the tools in the official plan, then we'll have that ability to pull on those when we need to.
Great, thank you.
Pam, did you have some comments? I see you've.
Thank you, Councillor McAlpine. I just wanted to add a little bit of context to Brandon's response. As Brandon identified, we really need that policy context in the official plan before we move into projects about heritage conservation districts. And we know that our target date is July 2022 for the official plan to be completed. And so once that is, then we can absolutely, Councillor Howes, bring something forward to the Heritage Committee, identify pros and cons and next steps in moving forward with the Heritage Conservation District plan.
So, do we have any other questions from the committee, Brandon, or for Pam? Ruth, would you have any questions at all, or?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Okay. Joan? You'll need to.
I just wanted to get clarity. So we do need to, as the committee, I think, and people in general need to understand what's involved in heritage conservation district designation compared to what we currently have with the zoning bylaw. And so I guess I'm just not sure, is it just to keep those tools available to us that would be in the official plan, or does it need to be included that we're going to look into heritage conservation district designation, or like, I guess I'm just not clear what the official plan needs to include.
So through the chair,
Brandon?
that's a great question. Yeah, so essentially with the official plan, because it is very, very high level, we'll just have to kind of include those references to those tools, making them available to the committee and to us. And as Pam mentioned, then we can further kind of explore which ones are best for which aspects of heritage and cultural preservation we're seeking. But like I say, beyond even just the Heritage Act, there's other tools as well that look into, for example, I think it's the community permit planning system. I may have that wrong, but it's another tool that's available to kind of look at things holistically, and you can include design and heritage with that as well. So it goes beyond just looking at heritage by itself. But like I say, we can, as long as we kind of make reference to those tools in the toolbox, which we intend on doing, then we can explore those opportunities with the committee in a bit further after we've kind of created that toolbox.
Okay. So do we have any further questions for Brandon? Okay. If you could send out what's currently in place, Brandon, to the committee, and then that would help us with our conversations and in the future. So, okay. So seeing nothing more, and then we'll move on to the retirement of Carol Moore. Next steps, Allison Newton.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to update the committee a little bit on Carol's unfortunate departure and how we plan to fill that position moving forward, some of the changes that we're making, and some of the goals for that position as they relate to the Arts, Culture, Heritage Master Plan that was mentioned, and also the Downtown Master Plan, and how I would like to have this committee involved, if possible, in that process. So as previously mentioned, Carol's official retirement will be the end of June. And of course, we're sorry to see her go. I recognize all the work that she's done for this committee and for the county in general. How we envision replacing this position is all the work that Carol was doing, but expanding it a little bit. And that's represented in really what the title will be, which is the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Officer. So the focus of this position, which incidentally we hope to post within the next couple of weeks, it's sitting with HR right now. And as I said, it's imminent, so it will be going out very shortly. The primary responsibility will be looking at, first of all, getting the Arts, Culture, Heritage Master Plan going and working with this committee on that master plan. We envision this to be very complementary to the planning role. So as Brant mentioned, a lot of the land use policies, the heritage districts, all of the sort of regulatory framework that could support heritage and also arts and culture within the community. This position would be focusing on that sector development. So how that relates to other activities going on within the county, how our residents and visitors can interact with our entire suite of opportunities, whether that be heritage tours, festivals, public art, all of those components that form that sector, this person will be coordinating. And what that suite is going to look like will be fleshed out through the master plan. And what I'd like to do is have this committee maybe review the terms of reference for that plan prior to it going out, just in case there's anything you think we've missed or that you'd really like to see. The scope is not entirely determined, so we do have some flexibility prior to the RFP going out. And I think this committee would have some really valuable input on what could be included and what could be covered off in that plan, and then work very closely with that new staff person to get that implemented. And they'd also be working with of course, Brendan from planning. I also wanted to just touch very, very briefly on the downtown master plan, because there is a little bit of overlap, and we mentioned it just a little bit earlier today. But just a sort of a refresher, because this was a little while ago before anyone was probably had their minds turned to this. The downtown master plan spoke to the arts, culture, heritage master plan, and they really will work in tandem together. So the downtown master plan is talking about only public space. So while there were some reference in the plan to conceptual buildings that may or may not be there in the future, the realm of that plan was really talking about public space and how that relates to the buildings, how it functions, how we have people moving about the downtown, how they can spend time in the downtown, and all the associated infrastructure. And so one of the things, as I mentioned, was really bringing in as much as possible the history of downtown Paris. And we'd really like to honor that as much as possible. I mentioned the Millrace route because I think it's a fabulous way to trace a walkway throughout the downtown and really be able to bring some of that history forward. And also bring in a little bit of greenery. So, you know, obviously that's not speaking to the heritage, but being able to have people actually spend time in the downtown when it's not just for running errands. It should be a core in the sense that it's a gathering place for the community. So we really want to create a space where people can gather, and there's benches and trees and that sort of thing in between the buildings. That really create an atmosphere for people to spend some time. And like I said, the Arts, Culture, Heritage Master Plan will really complement that and speak to what heritage and arts pieces we can incorporate in that public space. So that's going to be the chief responsibility of this new staff person, at least over the next year or two, and they will be responsible for the ultimate implementation. And just one more note I wanted to mention with this position is we plan, I know it's been something that's really been on the radar of this committee, is to have the heritage registry completed. So Pam and I have spoken, and we'd like to have this person, along with our heritage summer student, work on that heritage registry over the summer and have it complete and ready for this committee approval by September. That is my update, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
No, everything sounds really good. So do we have some questions from our committee for Allison? Okay. So that just again, timeline, when we start working on this, the master plan and getting input from our committee and stuff like that, it's more the fall that you would start looking for input from our committee, or is this something you want us to be working on before that, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if it's acceptable to this committee, what I'd like to do is while we're getting this staff, this new person hired and on board, is for us to get the terms of reference solidified. And so I'd like input, obviously, from Pam's group and ideally this committee also to get those terms of reference finalized. So when this new staff person is kind of up and running, and hopefully our summer student has completed all the background work that will go into the master plan, that we can get an RFP out hopefully in the fall. And then of course we would start stakeholder consultation. This group would be, you know, a key stakeholder in that process.
Okay. Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Allison. I just wanted to say thank you for the update. I know we've been on hiatus for quite a while, and I know there's been lots of questions, and in 10 minutes you answered a lot of them, and I know that the heritage registry, heritage inventory is something that seems like it's been almost done for a long time. So I was very, very pleased to hear that there will be some staff attention to that over the next few months through, as you explained, and that'll be a nice project to get finished. Thanks.
Mayor Bailey.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Allison, is that an inventory of the entire county?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it does cover the entire county. It's not just Paris.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. So do we have any other questions for Allison? Okay. Would you be able to send out to us sort of something along what you would like to see from the committee in regards to that terms of reference? And then if we had a subcommittee set up, then we could start discussing it amongst us, sort of the questions that you would be asking us for that. And because we're new to the process, most of us, we probably, that would help some direction, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to do that. Really, we're going to be identifying in that what the, you know, the general goal of the master plan, what we expect the deliverables to be at the end, and the results of the plan. And like I said, we are at a point where, you know, we're just beginning the process. It won't happen for a couple of months. The RFP won't go out. So we do have an opportunity here, you know, as long as resources allow, to expand the scope of that. So if there's really a piece that you don't see or a deliverable that you'd really like to see come out of that we haven't captured, that's really what we want to know from this committee, so that we can look at potentially expanding the scope of that project while we still have an opportunity to be flexible. So I can certainly put that in writing and send it out to the committee.
Okay, that would be appreciated. Okay. So is there any other questions for Allison at this point?
No.
Okay, seeing none. Oh. Okay. So then Brandon, if you want to give us an update on the heritage inventory.
I'll start with you, Chair McAlpine. Allison's covered it, so I appreciate that. Yeah, so like she said, we'll be working with their staff as well, offering any support that they need, and then hopefully by September things are a bit back to normal with meetings, and we'll have some more information for you then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as this has been an ongoing report regarding the heritage inventory for probably 10 years now, and so it'll be nice to see that wrapped up. And it's there was some concerns about some legislation coming through, I guess, provincially, that might change how we were approaching this, but apparently that's been shelved, so that allows us to continue forward as we've been planning all along. So, and that's one of the biggest things that Carol's worked on, and we got to give her a lot of credit for all the work that's gone above and beyond probably what was ever necessary for it. So, and of course, it's going to be an ongoing living document that will be looked at every year or two, and places added and subtracted as time goes on. So I don't know if any comments or questions to that. So, but it's nice that everybody's on board on that and looking forward to it. So next meeting and adjournment, I think at this point, sounds like we'll be having one maybe more official meeting in June to just go over some of this arts and culture master plan and in terms of reference and some of the other information background. And I'd like to see us maybe do some committee meetings if people are interested, maybe one or two, just to have some general conversation about going forward as we start our processes again and seeing what the committee would like to see us doing more of, and continuing what has been the best practices of this group. And so I don't know if we have any comments about that at this point.
Well, not from me anyway.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate everybody, you know, after this long hiatus, being able to come back and being very enthusiastic about joining in the conversations regarding 12 Broadway in particular. That's really set this committee back to realizing how important it is. And it's been actually, from talking to staff, this is probably actually the earliest that we could have probably started up again, just giving all the restrictions with COVID and all the challenges regarding COVID with the county. So, so thanks again. And I'm just going to leave it to work with the staff to come up when we were able to do the next meeting. Perhaps we'll be able to do it maybe at the end of the day, so other members that weren't able to join us today are able to join us in the future, and we'll go from there. So I don't know if any last comments quickly before we sign off. Okay. Well, thanks again.